Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So we are able to pull another new mystery card today, but before I go ahead and pull that card, I want to thank all of you guys that jumped into the stream. We built a deck together, we kind of piloted a couple of different things, we chatted back and forth. It was a really good time and I appreciate all of you guys that joined. If you missed it and you want to check it out, or you want to follow so that you can join us live next time, go ahead and head to twitch.tv/TLSGsnap. The link will be down below to give us a follow or check out the video on demand. And then if you're liking the content over here on the YouTube channel, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us grow and expand. It helps us know that you're enjoying the content. And we are nearing in on that first major channel milestone of 1,000 subs. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pull our mystery card for today. We get Psylocke. So Psylocke is a key piece in any kind of ramp deck, and it feels like the piece that we were missing for our Mr. Negative deck. So Psylocke, we're going to be able to drop on turn 2, and then if we have Mr. Negative in hand on turn 3, we can go ahead and drop him on that turn. If we don't, we can always use Psylocke as a cycle tool to get the on reveal upside and then send her back into our deck. So a pretty cool card in a Mr. Negative deck, and then she works well in any other kind of ramp deck, but Mr. Negative is the one that I'm most excited to run her in, and so that's going to be the one that we're going to build today, and then we'll explore some of the other options with her a little bit later. Alright, so we did go ahead and throw a deck list together that I think is going to be pretty good. At this point, we have almost all of the resources that we need for a really strong, solid Mr. Negative deck. And I'll go through the cards that we added and a couple that we considered and why we didn't add them in. So before we run through the deck list, for those of you that don't know or haven't seen, Mr. Negative is a really cool and unique card in that on reveal, swap the power and cost of all cards in your deck. So all of your high cost, low power cards like your Wolfsbane, your Devil Dino, your Spider-Man, they become lower cost and higher power. So you get a lot of upside out of having Mr. Negative. We have Sunspot as a cheap 1-drop card. It can also buff up over time. If you draw him late, you can use him as a cheap cycle tool for Lockjaw. We have Psylocke, our new ramp card, which, same thing. If we have Psylocke and Mr. Negative in our opening hand, we're pretty much going to snap immediately. Because at that point we're getting several turns. With Mr. Negative, we're not having as many high cost cards in our hand that are not inverse that become hard to use. We have Ironheart and Wolfsbane. Both buff either the board or themselves up with the on reveal ability. So we're either able to drop this into our Lockjaw lane to send it back in, or we can drop this to finish off a lane. So like Wolfsbane, we can drop it as the last card in a lane. If we're feeling cheeky, we can send it in with Lockjaw and hope to draw it back again, to then drop it again some other turn. But that's if we're feeling lucky with it. Lockjaw is going to enable us to get even more cards out onto the board. So we can cycle in our on reveal abilities. We can cycle through some of our cheaper cards to pull out some of our more expensive negative cards. And with this negative deck iteration, we went with making sure that all of the cards, no matter what got pulled, would not feel bad to pull. So before, when I ran Arnim Zola in this deck list, pulling him in with Lockjaw felt bad because then you can't control what happens. It just feels really, really hard to control. Same thing with having a rogue in this deck. If you pull him in with Lockjaw, it becomes really wild. You can't really anticipate pulling that in. And so to mitigate that downside, we're putting in cards that no matter what gets pulled, we're happy with. No matter what gets pulled, it's going to be a good card. And then we have Devil Dinos, who buffs up depending on how many cards we have in hand, and if it's inverse, it is zero cost, 4 power. And then Jubilee, whether or not Jubilee gets inversed, we're going to be able to drop Jubilee and it'll pull in one of our inverted cards after we play Mr. Negative. We can play this into a Lockjaw to pull 2 inverted cards. There's a lot of good utilization with this. And then if we ever don't draw into Mr. Negative, we can drop Jubilee, hoping that we pull into Mr. Negative or getting that additional chance to pull into Mr. Negative on turn 4. We have Spider-Man in this deck list. So Spider-Man being on reveal, your opponent can't play cards at this location next turn. So this would kind of lock them out of the location just a little bit. Ideally, we would be able to play this and Magic, if they're both inverted, on turn 6, so that we could cap out whatever location we think they're going to leave space in. And this one may be one of our not as strong performers, and it may be something that we cut, but it is a card that if we're not going into magic, maybe we drop Spider-Man on turn 5. That way we can really control turn 6 and those swings. We can limit what the opponent's going to be able to do. And that way we can capitalize on dropping our resources efficiently. You have Iron Man, who is going to make any lane that he's in stronger, and then if he's inverted, he's going to be a 10 power on top of that, so he's going to be 5, and then that's going to be doubled. Just really good upside with Iron Man. Same thing with White Tiger. You drop him for 1 power. He's a 5 power card, and he generates a 7 power token. So a very, very good card to have inverted. And then lastly, we have Magic. Magic being another one of our recent card unlocks. So Magic on reveal, change this location to Limbo. This is going to give us yet another turn to capitalize on Mr. Negative's inverted cards. So let's say we don't get into our Psylock early. Magic is going to allow us to get 1 additional card so we can really pump out all of our power and use just about as much as possible. So ideally we can cycle Wolfsbane 2 times. We can cycle Ironheart 2 times. We can get the additional upside from those cheaper on reveal cards to really make the rest of our lanes shine. And so that is the general idea of the deck list. I'm really excited to have unlocked Psylocke. I think there's going to be a lot of cool uses for her. Some decks she's going to feel clunky in, but some I think she's going to make it feel really, really strong. So if you're wanting to drop a high priority 4-cost card, so like let's say you're running a Sandman deck, which we don't have Sandman yet, she's going to be able to be a pretty good tool or resource to drop that card early. And so let's go ahead and jump in and see how it goes. All right, first up we have Bootleg, and so we don't have, okay, so we do draw into Psylocke. If we can get lucky and top deck a Mr. Negative here on this next turn, then we will snap right away because we will have the combo. We don't, and we shuffled rocks into our deck. Otherwise, I would drop the Psylocke, and maybe I still do that. Drop the Psylocke and then anticipate dropping a Jubilee next turn. But with rocks being shuffled into our deck, I anticipate pulling in. What an amazing top deck here. That's amazing. So we're going to go ahead and drop our Mr. Negative. We couldn't have asked for a better card. Ideally, we would have wanted that in hand. And so we're going to go ahead and snap. We're going to keep the middle location open for cycling out rocks. But we're going to go ahead and snap because we do have a turn 3 Mr. Negative. So we're going to get a lot of upside out of it. We're going to have a cheaper Magic, a cheaper Spider-Man. I guess all the other cards are just so-so, but if we can draw our Lockjaw and start cycling those cards out, and we get really cheap rocks. So this is the last turn cards can be played here, so I think we go ahead and we get more upside out of keeping the rock in a hand from Devil Dino, and we can use it as a cycle tool if we need to. And I think that's safer than dropping our Jubilee, because our Jubilee would probably pull in a rock. So I think that's what we go with. If they have a Juggernaut, it pushes this out. It becomes hard to win this lane, but they do have a Juggernaut. And so we still have our White Tiger, which is going to be able to add resources into the flooding lane for us to win that one. So we're not sweating it too terribly bad, at least not just yet. So we get another inverted rock. I think what we do is we drop Iron Man here. Next turn, and we're going to hold it for now, but next turn we can drop a 0-cost rock to block this one off. That would allow us to drop our White Tiger here and guarantee that the White Tiger token is going to go into the flooded location. So that's our tentative plan, and then as long as they don't have a way to counter this lane, I think we take the easy win here. And they say they have a big red skull coming in. Wow. And so unless they're going to Arnhem Zola and send it here and here, at which point our 1-power White Tiger would win this lane. So do we do the rock, or do we do the 1-power Sunspot? I think either way. I think we just let them know that we had the rock in hand, the 1-power rock, and then we're going to leave the rest of them. Even though we could play them mid, we're going to leave the rest of them because each one that we play is going to make our Devil Dino weaker and weaker. So we don't want to do that if at all possible. We want to hold off from making that happen. So I think this is the play, and I still feel pretty confident in it. Because that's going to guarantee our White Tiger goes over here. Unless they can add resources in, then I think we win pretty easily here. because they're going to have 2 locations. So they drop a magic in mid. And so maybe they are going to try to... Do we think they ever try to do a Shang-Chi? So they're running the magic extension. Usually I run that whenever I'm wanting to blow up 1-cost cards and have a Shang-Chi and just have some general counterplay. So do we anticipate that and drop our Devil Dino down just below that threshold? Does that ever become dangerous for us? So I think we do the inverted magic, which is going to drop him down to 9. Okay. And then we were going to do 1 additional card, which would drop him down to 7. It would make it, if they dropped a really big minion here, a little bit tougher to win it. But I think it would be maybe the safer of the plays. And so they did end up retreating, but we had the big brain plays thinking out. So I think we were going to be able to sweep that win, even if they had the ideal like a Shang-Chi or something to try and swing the lane. Overall, deck list feels pretty solid. We got lucky in the Mr. Negative top deck. But whenever that happens, I feel like this is going to be a very high win rate deck, as long as you can get your combo off. If not, you try and salvage where you can. Next up, we have Mr. Beluga 11. So we don't draw into either of the 2 cards that we need to have on turn 2 to like guarantee us a win here. But if we can draw into Mr. Negative, we still get to play him next turn because of the super flow. I think we play Lockjaw in this far right lane. Or do we play him in the far left lane? That's going to allow us to cycle some of our lower cost cards and pull out some of our bigger ones. We won't be able to drop Jubilee into the Lockjaw lane, but I think that's okay. I don't think we necessarily need to. Oh, and they changed the super flow. So we're not going to be able to drop a Mr. Negative if we get him this turn. But it'd still be nice to have. And so we're going to go ahead and cycle our Sunspot back in to try and pull a turn 3 Mr. Negative anyways, which would be huge. It would not be a conventional way to do it. The dream. It would not be a conventional way to do it, but it would be a way to do it. And so now we have to decide where we want to drop our resources. So Kamar Taj is going to be a pretty key location for us, I think. So we're going to be able to drop Ironheart or Wolfsbane to get some pretty big upside in that area. And then we would have to change it with magic if we're playing that way. I think for now, we're just going to drop Devil Dino in this far right lane, so the Dark Dimension. That's going to kind of conceal what we have and hide the fact that we have a pretty decent card in oh my gosh, what a good Black Widow play. But I mean, free cycles. What do we have in deck? Do we want to pull any of that stuff out? We have Psylock, which at this point, We have Ironheart, which again at this point, we have Jubilee, which we don't want to pull unless we have 1 clean space. So maybe we do just 1 here, we do 1 here. I feel like we hold our Iron Man until the very end because it's a 0-cost card. And then do we ever do a White Tiger here? That's going to send a card, either 2 cards here or a card here and here, depending on what we pull with this cycle. I think we do. I think we go off of the fact that we're wanting to push quite a bit of power. Because with Morbius, that tells me they're going to have some discards in their hand. That's an awful pull, Jubilee. That tells me they're going to have some discards in their hand, or they should. I don't know that I've seen a Jessica Jones played in a very long time, and so they're running some form of like on reveal deck, but the Morbius just feels odd in what they had, or what they had displayed already. We had this location, we were going to be able to put this one pretty large, and I think we may have even been able to compete here with an Iron Man and a Wolfsbane. But overall, not the most conventional win. We weren't able to really capitalize on a lot of our inverted cards, but we had them in our back pocket had they let the game play out. And so I think we just drop our Sunspot in mid, we let him start buffing up. We have our Psylocke that we're going to drop next turn regardless. to try and just hope that we draw into our Mr. Negative. Unless we draw into Lockjaw, then maybe we hold off, but it just depends on what we draw here. So we draw Jubilee. So I think that's a good target for our turn 4, even if we don't draw into Mr. Negative here. So Jubilee is going to be able to be played, pull in an additional card, or an additional attempt at summoning Mr. Negative on turn 3. And then we swap hands at the start of turn 6. So we got to keep that in mind, and we want to dump as much power and as many cards as we possibly can up to that point. And so we do go ahead and drop our Jubilee, who pulls in, what are you going to pull in? Lockjaw, which then cycles out Jubilee, so not bad, into Mr. Negative. I don't think I could have asked for a better order for that to happen. And so now we have a lot of upside in all of our big cards. So our Magic, our White Tiger, our now Jubilee is going to be inverted. Do we let them know just how unlucky they were just yet? So I think we play our Wolfsbane here, and it cycles him out. It could cycle him out for what? White Tiger, Magic, a few other cards. I think we do that, and then we hope that we draw back into Wolfsbane to get the buffed up version of him to then buff up again. And so he's going to buff up, he's going to go back into our deck, and then we do get Magic, so we're not going to swap hands anymore. So that being a pretty good upside of having Magic, in addition to being able to extend the game. So we have 3 cards in hand. We have 2 more draws that we're going to do. What do you guys say that we cycle one more time here? We let our Wolfsbane get absolutely large. I think that's our play. We could swap out and end up getting an Ironheart, which is okay. We could swap out and get a Jubilee, which is also okay. Maybe we wait 1 turn. I say we wait 1 turn here before we drop him there. And that's if we end up dropping him. Maybe we hold him and just drop him on the last turn, because I'd kind of like to drop Spider-Man next turn to limit where they're able to play. And so we're going to be able to play pretty big resources into the Crimson Cosmos. So I think we just play off of that. We drop Iron Man this turn. They drop Iron Man as well. And so they're going to have a pretty large lane here. And so if we can draw into Jubilee here, perfect. So that leaves in our deck, what we still have are, we have our White Tiger, who's been inverted, and our Ironheart, both of which we get an upside of cycling through. And then we're going to go ahead and do this. I think we go ahead and, I'm torn. I want to trigger Wolfsbane again and then draw back into him. But at the same time, I really want to drop like a Spider-Man to limit what they're able to play this upcoming turn. So 1, 2, and 3 cost cards can't be played here. So what do we think about doing something like this? And then we can kind of guarantee what we're going to have in our hand next time to cycle through, which we won't be able to cycle at that point. We're going to have everything out on the board. And maybe that feels bad too, because maybe we push one of the White Tigers over. Do we even need to worry about playing this additional card? Because at this point it's 3, 4, 5 mana. We draw into White Tiger, that's 6. We draw into, we draw into Ironheart, that's 0. So we don't need to worry about dropping Jubilee this turn. That way we can guarantee what interaction and what's going to happen. We could even cycle a card like Wolfsbane and then pull it with Jubilee afterwards for some really cool upside. And then we are going to lock off the Crimson Cosmos. And we figured they would drop low-cost cards this turn and try to finish off the game with like a very large, maybe a Chavez or a big, large minion. And that gives us the peace of mind to know that we can play in one of these other ones, because they already dropped their Nightcrawler and moved him over, I'm fairly certain. And so we do have the Ironheart here. And in our deck, we still have, what's the last card we have in our deck? We have White Tiger. So I think what we do is we drop Ironheart. We drop Wolfsbane. That's going to pull out a white tiger and send Wolfsbane back into our deck. We're then going to drop a Jubilee, and it's going to pull Wolfsbane out onto the board to get a third on reveal buff. And then we can drop either Ironheart or Devil Dino. So Ironheart's going to give 6 power across the board, but Devil Dino gives the 6 power specifically in this lane. So to get that upside, it would have to target both of these cards, or 2 out of the 3 cards. And so I think we do that. We don't drop this last one because we do want Jubilee to pull in. Or do we ever not do that? Actually, no. I think we drop our Devil Dino here. We can guarantee that the 7 power card from the Tiger is going to go over here. That's going to take out the luck element or the risk element. Let's go ahead and snap. Oh, well, it's not going to go through, is it? Okay. So we ran out of time right as we snapped, and so then it extended it by just a second. But they do drop a lot of resources into the danger room, and all of which are not getting destroyed. So very, very fortunate there. Okay, so their Ant-Man does get destroyed. So that takes away a lot of their upside, unfortunately, for them. Fortunately for us. So we're going to get a second buff on our Wolfsbane. We're going to send that back in. It's going to pull White Tiger, push a 7 power token that can't be destroyed. We're then going to use Jubilee to pull in a Wolfsbane that can't be destroyed, that is then going to buff up again. So we take out the risk of Danger Room here by kind of controlling what we had in our deck and what we cycled through. That feels so very solid. I feel like everything went right for us this game and with this deck. That was amazing. So we had a 17 power Wolfsbane. So even if their Ant-Man hadn't been destroyed, there was no way that they make up that big of a gap. Oh wow. Okay, so next up we have Psylocke. Oh no, that's so unfortunate that our car. Oh yeah, that is the world's fastest. See you later. Oh boy. All right, so we do have Mr. Negative that we start out with. And so let's see if we can draw. Oh, and then we get a discounted card. So we're going to be able to drop him on turn 3 regardless. So I think we snap off of that information. And then I think we do go ahead and drop our Sunspot, and they snap back. How bold, Matthew. How bold. So what did you have that it made it so much better for Elysium? Maybe they're running a Mr. Negative deck as well. So they have Lady Sif and the Ghost Rider combo. So that does make me a bit nervous because we don't know where those resources are going to land. And so we do have our Mr. Negative here. I think we drop our resources over in this left lane because on this one, on turn 6, cards can't be played here. So we want to have a decent amount of resources here. Okay, so they're just going to jump straight in, go Cutthroat, take our heart out with that Infinite. So now we need to fight for the other 2 locations. And so we're going to start getting our inverted cards in. But I kind of want to wait until we have more of them to play, because we're going to be able to extend the game by 1 turn with Magic. So I think we just pass here. So then they have Wave. So Wave feels pretty unfortunate, but we were going to be able to sneak in at least 1 turn where it's normal. So even if they have an Odin that they play on 5, we can sneak out our Magic on turn 6. Do we ever do that? Guys, can we sneak the Infinite lane? So this is going to be 10, so this is going to be, so 26 and 10, so, wow. Yeah, so it's going to be 36, and cards won't be able to be played here on turn 6. We're going to steal the Infinite lane by a large margin, like a very large margin. So very, very unfortunate for them. And then next turn, we're going to be able to drop both our Magic. No, we're not. Yes, we are. We're going to be able to drop both our Magic and our Spider-Man because cards cost 1 less. We're going to have 6 mana. and then they drop the wave, which typically would make it 2. So the magic is not, no, she is inverted. No, she's not. She's not inverted. She got buffed up by the Wakandan embassy. So we have a large advantage here. The only issue that I see with dropping our magic is that it will allow them to play additional resources in that lane on turn 7, is the only potential downside that we see there. So do we go with it anyways? In our deck we still have Devil Dino, we have our White Tiger, which would be pretty nice, and then we have our Lockjaw. So we have our cycle mechanic still in our deck, but we have a lot of inverted cards that we're able to kind of play around with and make use of. So we lock down this lane. We're gonna have an additional turn, but they're not gonna be able to drop resources here. And I think that gives us enough information here. So let's go ahead and drop our magic. They lock down this mid lane with Professor X. Oddly enough, that you would drop a Professor X on the last turn. And then they drop, they pull Invisible Woman, which does not win them the location, but we are still ahead here. So I don't think they're able to drop anything that's going to be enough value for them. That's going to get them 11 power over in this lane. Because this is our only card that's over 9 in a Shang-Chi. And so if we drop something like... So that tells me we don't want to drop our Ironheart, because that would 6, 7, 8... No, they would be fine. If we dropped our Ironheart here to try and target these two... If we did something like this, and then do we just drop a Pity Jubilee just because? Because I don't think it's worth trying to pull out our White Tiger here. Because I can't drop resources here. We just have to make sure we compete with this one. And so I think that's the play. Does our Wolfbane get over 9 though? So 2, 4, 6. So it's 7. Nope, we're fine. We're fine. Let's go ahead and lock that in. I anticipate it may be a Shang-Chi here. But I think we're fine even if they get the Shang-Chi off. So we Killmonger. So they kill our Sunspot, but it's not enough because we were anticipating it getting destroyed anyways, because that was going to be the only target with a Shang-Chi. So we had it last game. The magic actually didn't give us any strategic advantage other than knowing what their Jubilee pulled in. It took that random element out and allowed us to make a little bit more informed of a decision. So you guys see what I see, right? We say hello and then we snap. So we have both the Psylocke and the Mr. Negative. We're going to be able to guarantee that we get our negative cards starting on turn 4 by dropping Mr. Negative on turn 3. And right now we don't have any of our large cards, so like White Tiger, Iron Man, Devil Dino are all still in our deck. And so we still have a really good chance at keeping those in our deck now, because we just need to... Oh, and then there's White Tiger. Unfortunate. So I think we drop Psylocke into Hellfire Club. Hellfire Club being a little bit harder to get resources in typically, and they have the Infinite. Oh, so hopefully they play it early so that we can kind of play around and know where we need to drop resources. And then Onslaught Citadel is not terrible for our Iron Man or our Devil Dino. Probably our Devil Dino, so we can drop our Iron Man somewhere else and he have that lane breaking, game changing kind of effect. So they end up dropping a Sentinel. I think what we do is we don't necessarily want to drop our Lockjaw here. I think we drop it into Hellfire Club. I know we already have a card there, so it's going to limit the number of cycles that we do. Or do we ever just play it outright this time and not cycle for our cards? We can pull a card in with Jubilee. It's just so much more satisfying when you can rotate through the cards that you have. We're going to do Lockjaw here. And if he pulls his Ghost Rider into Onslaught Citadel, we have a chance at winning that one. Anywhere else, it becomes really, really difficult to compete. And so this being the next to last turn, we can drop our Spider-Man. It'll cycle out. We can drop our Wolfsbane. it will cycle out. We have our Jubilee in hand, so we don't have to worry about that one. We can potentially extend the game by drawing into Magic here, and we get a lot of potential good upside. We could draw into Iron Man to potentially win this lane. I think that's our play here. And they drop a Red Skull into Onslaught Citadel. So that's interesting because that means all enemy cards at that location are going to have +4 because the ongoing effects are doubled. So that seems like a really strange thing to do there. And we get the double Iron Man, or the double Spider-Man. So do we think they're going to drop their Ghost Rider Infinite here this turn, or do we think they're going to drop it here? Okay, so no, maybe they didn't draw into it. And so I was trying to decide between dropping a Jubilee here. That way each of these cards get +4, and then whatever he draws into would be okay. I was trying to decide between that or potentially extending the game with Magic, or trying to decide what we were going to do and where. But they did end up retreating. We had them locked out of this left lane, and we had it by a very large margin over here. And so far this deck list feels really, really solid. I think I am going to end this video here though. We've played about 10-15 games, and it's been really, really consistent. We're able to swing a lot more games for 4 cubes or 8 cubes versus our death deck that we had yesterday. And so this one feels very, very fun. I think the only piece that I am missing that I think would make this feel maybe even better is Mystique. If we could play strategically around Lockjaw to have Mystique in hand so that we can play it when we drop an Iron Man, or we can play it when we drop a Devil Dino, or we have both of those in hand, we can get a lot of upside out of those 2 cards. We haven't pulled Mystique just yet, but I'm sure we'll pull her soon. We're only 20 to 30 cards left into pull 3, which will take a long time, which will still take a while, but we are getting pretty deep, so we're getting a lot of the cool combo pieces. So I'm very, very glad that we pulled Psylocke. I think it fits perfectly into this Mr. Negative cycle deck. It just feels so strong. As long as you are paying attention to what you're rotating out, what you're rotating in, and kind of what that looks like, it feels really, really solid. And so with that, I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys again for all of the support. Please let me know what you thought of the video down below. Please let me know if you check out this deck list and how it does for you. So with that, we are going to end the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.